We speak student!
Freytag's pyramid plot analysis, a la Shmoop. We all have our favorite kind of stories. Some of us like mysteries. Some of us like thrillers. Some of us like romances. And some of us like books that are a combination of all these things. But no matter what sorts of stories we prefer, the plots of most tales follow a specific pattern. Meet Gustav Freytag. He was a 19th century German writer who authored works with names like Saul und Haben and Bilder aus der deutschen Vergangenheit. Anyway, while we're somewhat less likely to read Freytag's works than we are to, say, scale El Cap without a rope, Freytag did leave something behind that we're all familiar with, namely Freytag's pyramid. And no, that isn't located in Egypt. Freytag's pyramid is a generic diagram that can be applied to the plots of most stories. See, every time Freytag read a work of fiction, he noticed that many of the plots followed a particular pattern.
Very interesting.
A pattern that could be sketched out in the shape of a pyramid. Freytag postulated that there are 7 different items just about every story possesses, and he placed these items on his pyramid. They include the exposition, the inciting incident, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the resolution, and the dénouement. Well, the first E in dénouement had an accent mark, by the way, because this first word is all fancy in French. Let's go over what each of these items involves in terms of plot, using Alexander Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo to illustrate. Well, the exposition segment of a story occurs at the beginning of the tale, and it's where the author sets the stage by showing us who the characters are and where the story takes place. In The Count of Monte Cristo, Dumas plops his readers down in the middle of Marseille, France in 1815, and then introduces us to the novel's main character, Edmond Dantes. We also meet Edmond's dad and girlfriend, his boss, the 2 guys who are out to screw him over, and the 1 guy who screws him over but kind of didn't mean to.
Uh-oh.
The next step in the plot, as charted by Freytag's pyramid, is the inciting incident. Basically, this is the event that sets the rest of the story in motion. In Edmund's case, he's arrested at his own betrothal party for treason he did not commit. Since the arrest occurs at around page 50, The Count of Monte Cristo is better than 1,000 pages long. It's safe to assume that the rest of the book will be about Edmund kicking butt and taking names, right? Well, the next stop on Freytag's diagram is the rising action, which isn't a specific event like the inciting incident, but rather a series of happenings where the story builds and we, the readers, get pulled along for the ride. The rising action in The Count of Monte Cristo spans years, countries, the spending of a lot of money, and Edmund's, or we mean the Count's, fabulous machinations as he plots out the destruction of everyone who'd done him wrong prior to about page 80. At the apex of Freytag's pyramid is the climax, or the most exciting part of the story. At the climax of The Count of Monte Cristo, everyone dies or is ruined, and the Count gets his revenge, even though he starts to think, well, maybe this whole revenge thing wasn't such a great idea. A little late for second thoughts, eh there, Count? Well, then we come to the falling action, or the events that occur in the story as a result of the climax. In this particular Dumas novel, the falling action involves a secondary character hanging around on the Isle of Monte Cristo eating hash.
Oh, boy!
The resolution section of Freytag's pyramid is all about, well, resolution. The problem or conflict at the heart of the story gets dealt with. In the resolution of The Count of Monte Cristo, the Count reunites 2 young people in love, and accepts the love of the hot Albanian princess he rescued from slavery back in the day. In the dénouement, any of the story's outstanding business is tied up. Maybe the author explores a theme or 2 or hints at a sequel.
Did someone say more money?
Dumas has the Count sail off into the sunset with the hot Albanian princess, and scene. While every story is different, Gustav Freytag's contribution to literature was his observation that most works of fiction are constructed along similar lines, and that this construction could be mapped out using Freytag's handy-dandy patented pyramid technique. While this may not seem like a particularly interesting thing to be famous for, it's better than being remembered as that popular German author who hated Poles.
But they are rather ugly. Did someone say more money?
Subscribe to check out more equally fantabulous videos. You should see the subscribe button just below this one. If you're having trouble locating it, we recommend you watch our video, How to Find the Subscribe Button.